Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I hope you are all well and healthy. Um, if we get back to our classes of metaphysical poetry, I think we dealt well with John Donne. We have explained his poem Valediction, and I don't think we need to go through any more poems for John Donne. So it's better if we move to the next poet, who is George Herbert. I have to be a little bit brief. George Herbert was born in 1593 and died in 1633. One of the major metaphysical poets. George Herbert can be felt as a poet who tends more to deal with the religious themes because he himself was a person who had a religious life, born in Wales City in the United Kingdom. His education at the University of Cambridge, he got an MA, became a poet, a public orator, and a priest who starts working in the church after the death of King James. Fame and reputation, they talk of the countryside, and these most biographical details are not that important for us as much as the text of the poem itself. If we talk a little bit about the features of his style, Herbert is known for his poetry, which was published posthumously under the title of The Temple, Sacred Poems and the Private Ejaculations. His poems are characterized by a precision of language, a metrical versatility. That means that he has a variety of meters in his poems, as we would see in his poem Easter Wings. So we have very short lines, and then we move to longer ones, and so the various meters of his lines is one of his features. His style is also featured by an ingenious use of imagery or a conceit that was favored by metaphysical school, as we referred to with John Donne earlier. Many of his poems are of a religious nature, often revealing his own spiritual struggle and the solace he found in the priesthood, because he became a priest later in his life. He also wrote a book of principles for the guidance of rural clergymen, a priest to the temple, and etc. So we notice that most of his themes, his topics that he deals with, are related to religion or a spiritual conflict or something related to the church. This what characterizes his poetry, beside his way of dealing with conceit. We've dealt with conceit in John Donne, and we noticed that John Donne used it in a very perfect way. But George Herbert has his own way of dealing with conceit, and his conceit is implied. It is not written in 2 or 3 lines in the poem. No, his conceit, we can feel that the whole poem is to be considered or read as an image of conceit, as we will see with the shape of the poem. If we could look at the features, Herbert draws most of his images from nature, music, and the church. He pays attention to form, and in most of his poems, there is a strong correspondence between form and content. The visual shape of the poem in print is sometimes very important, as in Easter Wings. He is a master of a special sort of metaphysical conceit. This is what I am talking about, where the conceit is implied by the whole poem, as in Easter Wings, and the color. He pays attention to the titles of his poems. Sometimes the title is never mentioned in the poem, and sometimes the conceit is in the title itself, as in the pulley and the collar. Due to his love of music, especially the lute, he pays attention to the rhythm, the meter, and anything related to music. Most of his poems deal with conflict, inner conflict, because he lived as a priest. Have a look at the poem itself. So what could you see here is just like wings. If the title is Easter Wings, and we can see that there are wings here, as if we are talking about a bird, because most of the content of the poem will be speaking about wings and how the poet um, dreams to fly when he is purified from his own sins, etc. So we could see that this is a bird. So this is one of the images of conceit. It is implied in the shape of the poem. This is what we call visual poetry. Poets sometimes use a shape of a poem, like what we see now, the bird, in order to reflect certain ideas. So the shape of the poem is reflecting the content of the same poem. We're talking about a bird. So what we think about when we remember birds is a flying, feeling free, feeling moving in the air, no weight, no burdens, no shouldering any responsibilities. So this is what comes to our minds when we think of wings, flying, and birds. If I move to the poem, if I move to the poem itself, Easter Wings, the poem talks about Easter. What do we mean by Easter? Easter is a religious occasion in a Christian religion. It talks about the resurrection of Christ, and when Christ will be able um, to move and resurrected to God. So Christians believe that Jesus Christ is the savior of humanity, is the man, is the person who is going to be resurrected, and it's going to be um, purifying humanity from all the sins and taking responsibility for all people. So that's why you see sometimes people do some mistakes and some offenses, believing that Christ has already promised them that he is going to save their souls. So Easter itself, Easter is a religious occasion where Christians celebrate that kind of resurrection, because they believe that Christ was crucified and he died, and 3 days after his death he was resurrected, body and soul, and left to God. So they celebrate that resurrection every year, and sometimes it is not fixed the time of the celebration um, of that kind of celebration, but it is normally between the 22nd of March until 20 of April from every year. So Easter wings, the wings by which the person can fly at that religious occasion. Lord, the poet starts with invoking, asking, and talking to God, who created man in wealth and store. God, who created the human beings with wealth and store. Wealth and store refers to the abundance of blessings that we were born with. Um, and man here refers to Adam, as we will see later. Though foolishly he lost the same. So here we're talking about the first man who was created by God, which is Adam, our father Adam. Though foolishly he lost the same. So Adam was created with an abundance of wealth and everything that he required at his own time. But foolishly he was deceived and he lost everything, the wealth and the store. Decaying more and more. Decaying means losing the values, losing the importance, and um, being a little bit, let's say, destroyed, little by little, till he became most poor, till he became most poor, till he became with nothing, until he lost everything. Pay attention to the length of the lines. We started with a very long line, then it became shorter, and then shorter, and it became the shortest with most poor. So the poverty is indicated through the number of words in this line, only two words. So it refers that man got or gets nothing. Man, we're talking about Adam here, because he has been deceived, because he has been um, let's say played with by Satan. He lost the wealth and the store, and he started destroying his life and the life of people who come next. So he became very poor, and this is indicated with the very short line here. This is the first stanza where the poet finishes it with a very desperate and hopeless situation.